And now it's time we move past the House and past the Senate.
Well, sort of. We've got Article 1, Section 4. The times and places and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, except as to the places of choosing senators. So technically, the states are in charge of elections. Congress can make laws to alter certain things, but officially, the states are in charge. Which is why election law is so crazy.
Oh, yeah. So,
Um,
except, except for choosing senators, that means the Congress could change everything, but until we made the 17th Amendment, they couldn't change that.
yeah, yeah. And it's specifically the places of choosing senators, which we choose them at the ballot box now, so there's that. But um, I keep getting these public service announcements on YouTube from my local elections department to prove that, my state is fully vote by mail. And I guess they're trying to prove to everybody that seriously you can trust the vote by mail, because you can. It's vote by mail is a system that's been running since literally the Civil War, and it is actually a reliable system. But one person is talking about how, election night is actually like thousands of election nights. And it's like, yeah, that's true, because election law is such a patchwork in the United States. And it's one of the things that's really hard to explain to non Americans about the US system. Because the way I vote in Olympia is not the same as someone literally just a 2-hour drive away from me votes, even though we're in the same country, because you can cross a state border in that time.
Yeah, the way I vote from all the way in Ohio is different from the way you vote all the way in Washington.
Yeah, but I mean, even just my mom in Portland theoretically votes differently than I do. My county has 2 or 3 dozen drop boxes scattered all around the county, in the parking lots of city halls. And, for a while we were using one that's literally just in the parking lot of a supermarket. Why is it in the parking lot of the supermarket? I don't know. There was room. There's the one we use most often is in the parking lot of a fire station. My county has drop boxes all over the place because of our vote by mail, and that's not something you get in a lot of other states where most of the voting is still in person.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this. I might have mentioned this earlier in the series, but I used to vote in a place I could walk to in like 5 minutes. Now I vote. Now my voting place is a place that's 30 minutes away by foot.
Yeah. I I actually, for a while in college before we went to vote by mail, was voting on the same property in which I lived, because I lived in the dorms and my polling place was in the library building of the college.
That's the first time I ever heard of a voting place that's not a church.
My elementary school, when I was a kid, was a polling place.
Yeah.
I remember where in the building they stored the ballot booths, because they were there. They lived in the school and were just in storage the whole time, and it was near the music room. I used to come across them all the time when we were doing things around the auditorium, because our auditorium didn't have, it was one of those like auditorium / gym rooms where you could move all of the seats out of the way, but there was a permanent stage. So that was a polling place.
Well, I guess technically my first voting place was a elementary school too. It was just a Catholic elementary school.
Right. Yeah, this was a public one. And I mean, I know why they use churches. churches get used, and for a while, my polling place, when I moved out of the dorms and out of that neighborhood, my polling place became a church, and then it didn't matter anymore. And I think at my last department, my polling place just would have been the Department of Elections at City Hall, because I was walking distance from City Hall at my last department.
That's where I voted at in the 2020 election, because I did early voting, and the elections office in downtown county was it.
I actually did a caucus in 2008, which I hate caucuses, but I went to our local caucus and they crammed 4 precincts into one room at the city hall. It was, or the courthouse rather. And it was such a bad idea. Such a bad idea. All of our county offices were at the courthouse for reasons. Yeah, it was a mess.
Isn't that where you do a public vote instead of a private vote?
Yes. I have strong feelings on the subject of caucuses, not least because of how hard it is to cast your vote if you can't get to the caucus. At the time, not having, or you had to know that you would be working that day in order to send in a vote to your party. You couldn't assume that you would be working that day, and you had to send in your absentee ballot basically 2 weeks in advance. And you've worked the kind of jobs where you don't know your schedule that far in advance. So I had a lot of problems with the caucus system, and I'm glad we went back to primary, because I think a primary is more inherently democratic than a caucus.
Well, sometimes, I guess.
Well, more people get a say.
True.
And I think that a secret ballot is a really important aspect of democracy, and you don't get one of those in a caucus. The whole point is you stand up and say who you're voting for. My favorite part was the guy at our precinct who wanted us all to vote for Mike Gravel, because he didn't know the guy's name was pronounced Gravel, and also he didn't seem to know any of his policies.
Just like the name, it's like the grapple name, I guess.
Yeah. Like, how about we'll get back to you on that?
Okay. It says besides the senators, the Congress can change things. Some of them, I guess, make laws to alter such regulations.
Yeah. In theory, Congress could establish a law that would make primary voting for representatives on the same day throughout the United States. Under Article 1, Section 4, they do have that authority. They have never used it. They've left it to the states, which I also have feelings about, but they could.
I didn't even know there were primaries for senators or representatives.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's part of my Ted Cruz bewilderment, because they could primary Ted Cruz and put in a Republican any human actually likes, and yet somehow they never have. One of the most effective ways of getting your senator or representative out of office in a district that is very solidly controlled by one party is to run someone else in the primary who can get more votes in the primary and take the nomination.
It's like the same for president. I'm not sure, at least I haven't been aware of this, of any incumbent president had to run for a primary of his party.
No, incumbents have, theoretically, even Joe Biden was running. It's just that he was basically running unopposed. Lyndon Johnson lost several primaries, and that's why he ended up saying he was not going to run for another term. Because it looked like he would not get his party's nomination, and he would have found that utterly humiliating. It was better not to run than to run and not get the nomination.
But other than that, it's all up to the state legislatives.
It is all up to the state, and that's why primary dates keep changing and getting earlier and earlier, because everybody wants to have more importance, and it's this whole big thing, and I think there should be a national primary day, but nobody listens to me.
You should run. We should both run for a state representative.
Oh, I'd be a terrible representative.
So would
I'd be a really good advisor, but you know.
I probably would too, but I'd probably still be better than my current one.
Well, yeah. I don't know a lot about my state representative. I know my member of the House of Representatives for the federal level is a pretty cool lady.
Yeah, it's a thing. I don't think most people know who their state. I think a lot of people know who their state representatives are.
I just voted, and I cannot remember because I was so caught up in various other elections. Even on a state level, there were a lot of elections I thought were a lot more important.
But you said both senators and your U.S. representative are all blue.
Yep, we have 3. I think we have 2 Republican representatives currently, but like pretty much Washington is just blue. Even on the other side of the mountains, we tend to elect blue representatives.
Yeah, my 3 federal ones are all currently red now.
Yeah.
And probably be red in the future, even though one of the red ones is now vice president elect.
Huh. Apparently I am just barely in Legislative District 35, and my representatives are Republicans. Literally, I'm within walking distance of the next district over, which is probably why I kept getting commercials for the guy from the next district over. But my congressional district has a Democratic representative in Congress, and both of my senators are Democrats, and all 3 of them are women.